day. All right. And so with that, welcome again. I hope you guys had a great week. And with that, our icebreaker is this. Where is your family from? Where is your family from? And also, what was your favorite dish growing up? So where was your family? Where is your family from? And what was your favorite dish growing up? All right. So think about that for a couple seconds, and then we can go one by one. All right, Sam, you're up.
Hey, good morning, bro.
Hey, bro, good to see you.
My mother's from Petionville in Haiti. It's like I guess it's a part of Port-au-Prince, and my dad's from St. Mark, Haiti. Favorite food growing up was always lasagna. I like a good lasagna. Red sauce to be specific.
I like that. I like that. And tell me, where was your mom from again? Really quickly.
Petionville in Haiti.
Okay. Okay. I'm not gonna try to say that, but
Yeah, I think it's part of Port-au-Prince. I think most people just know that area.
yeah. Yeah. All right. And he said he loves that Haitian well, I guess it's Haitian lasagna, right?
That was just general lasagna because
Oh,
I've
general.
never been under myself, but just like I don't know. Back in the day with stuffers. Now that I'm a little older, my palate's a little bit more sophisticated. I like a nice little homemade lasagna.
Come
But
on.
yeah, that's that good stuff.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Sam. And also for starting us off. Both parents from Haiti and lasagna. Doesn't matter what kind of lasagna, but lasagna. I'm looking also in the chat, and Looney says, my family is Haitian, and anything that involves goat and Haitian spaghetti. My gosh, talk about that, Looney. Talk about that. All right. I love it. I love it. I love it. Also the Haitian spaghetti. Woo! When they got the peppers in there, the onions and everything. Oh man. And they got that spice.
Dante, you be knowing.
I know. Oh, I know. Trust me, I know. I went to all the Haitian spots in Spring Valley growing up. So my gosh, they got that right spice. It's like, I don't know how they get it so perfect, but woo, just brings me back. I gotta go back, Sam. I gotta go back. Anyway, let me bring it back for a second. Good to see all of you. Hey Erica, good to see you. I'm looking in the chat, we got Charlene. Charlene's from Haiti, and she said her favorite dish is fried goat with fried green plantain. Come on, come on, come on. And then before I move on to somebody else, as you know, I didn't say those words in Creole, right? So Charlene, help me out here, just like Sam helped me out. How do you
Okay.
go ahead?
It's tasso avec bonne fruit.
Oh, say it a little slower so my mind can process that.
Tasso avec bonne fruit.
Yes. The way you
That's
say
my
it,
favorite dish ever.
the way you say it with such passion, I gotta try that next week. I gotta try it. Come on.
Girl, not me
Yeah.
opening up Zoom to my favorite dish ever being spoken.
Yeah, girl. We gotta talk for that.
My gosh, you just bring it to life. That's what I'm talking about. You really bring it to life. So just want to welcome Tam and Darren. We're just going over this quick icebreaker. Where is your family from? And also, what was your favorite dish growing up? We'll take two more people. Let's see here. So CT says black rice and the macaroni. And how do you say that word that you put in the chat? Because
macaroni au gratin.
Okay, you see, you gotta put that little gratin. That's what I like. Come on, you better represent. You better represent. Yes, yes. Come on. Darian says Dominican and Mangu. Is that how you say it, Darian?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
Well, don't sound so sad about it.
I'm a little sick, bro. I'm a little sick.
Oh, you're a little sick. I was gonna say, okay. You know what?
Yeah.
You gotta pass. You gotta pass. All right.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
not judging me. Thank you.
I'll be praying. I'm gonna continue to pray for you. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that icebreaker for today. And as you'll notice, today we're just meeting at 10 a.m. That is not the regular time moving forward, but we're just changing it up just for today. And so moving forward in the next couple of weeks, it'll be the regular time. But just want to thank you guys for coming on today. And for those that didn't remember, feel free to shoot them a text, because today we're actually going to be covering something that has always been I would say like a topic that are on people's minds. People really want to find out, about people that no longer go to church, the reasons for it, what they're going through. And not only that, even before COVID, we had people leaving the church, but post-COVID, it brings on even more new challenges. And it's also different experience that either you or the people around you might be telling you why they don't have a quote unquote church experience or stop going to a physical building. And so we'll talk about those things today. This will be a part 1, and next week will be a part 2. And so let's pray as we open up our service for today. And, dear Heavenly Father God, we thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for your love. Thank you for who you are in our lives. And thank you for this body of believers, this online ministry, and also online church that you have created. We've been operating for 3 years, and it's just been a blessing, and many more years to come. And I thank you that church is not just limited to the 4 walls. I thank you for this family that continues to hold each other accountable, continues to read your word and grow, continues to grow emotionally and be vulnerable. Studies show that we're able to build stronger relationships when we're vulnerable with each other. And so imagine a group of people that never even scratched the surface. But I just want to say thank you for this group that continues to scratch the surface, even when it's uncomfortable. Help us as we talk about this topic today, that this is not just talking about one denomination. When we talk about people leaving the church, we're talking about what is happening throughout all of Christianity, no matter what denomination that you're a part of. And just continue to, Holy Spirit, be with us in this conversation. Help us to be real about what is truly going on. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right. And so with that, just want to say welcome again. And as we start today, let me see here. Just want to share with you some of this reading. And the reading or the book, I should say, that we're going to be covering for the next, I would say, 2 weeks. This book is called Dechurch, The Great Dechurching. So this book is called The Great Dechurching, for a reference. The caption is, who's leaving? Why are they going? And what will it take to bring them back? The Great Dechurching. Who's leaving? Why are they going? And what will it take to bring them back? Okay. And so think about that as we go along, and we just share this with you guys, and this will just help you get a gauge on what we're going to be covering. All right, so let me just share with you. This is from chapter 1 of the book, and it's entitled "What's at Stake?" What is at stake? It says, in the United States, we are currently experiencing the largest and fastest religious shift in the history of our country. As tens of millions of formerly regular Christian worshipers nationwide have decided that they no longer desire to attend church at all. These are what we now call the D-Church. Listen to this. About 40 million, I'll read that one more time, about 40 million adults in America today used to go to church, but no longer do, which accounts for around 16% of our adult population. It says here, for the first time in the 8 decades that Gallup has tracked American religious membership, more adults in the United States do not attend church more than attend church. This is not a gradual shift, it's a jolting one. That's 40 million adults that say that they used to go to church and no longer do. Okay, here's some historical context. There have been roughly 3 periods of rapid growth in religious adherence in the United States. And so the 3 periods are the First Great Awakening. This was from the 1730s to the 1740s. Then we have the Second Great Awakening, the 1790 to 1840. And the 4 decades following the Civil War, which was 1870 to 1906. And so from 1700 to 1776, religious adherence grew in the US from 10% to 17%. Interestingly enough, and perhaps contrary to popular opinion, historians of American religion have long noted that the colonies did not exude universal piety. There was general agreement that in the colonial period, no more than 10 to 20% of the population actually belonged to a church. Okay. And so as we keep on going on, it says here that what we have witnessed in the last 25 years is a religious shift about 1.25 times larger, but going in the opposite direction, It says here that in that time, about 40 million people have stopped attending church. More people have left the church in the last 25 years than all the new people who became Christians from the Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, and the Billy Graham Crusades combined. So let me just say that in layman's terms, from the 3 time periods that the Christian church was growing, which was the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, and also the Billy Graham Crusades, as much growth that was developed during those years and the amount of people that came to the church, in the last 25 years, we have lost more people that was gained during those 3 periods combined. Adding to the alarm is the fact that this phenomenon has rapidly increased since the 1990s. So please don't try to blame the last 5 years or the last 10 years. This decline has been happening since the 1990s. And if you're from New York and you think to yourself, well, maybe I was in New York or I was in a city and we didn't seem like we were dying when I was younger. Sometimes even within New York spaces, some people that were already from a different country, like Jamaica or Haiti, for example, like Adventists, the church was still dying even around 1990 or declining. But because people from Jamaica or Haiti or different places were already from a certain denomination, they moved to New York, then it seemed like churches were quote unquote full. But it was like you're just moving from one location to the next, to give you some context on that. And so let me stop right there for now. And before I go on and start giving you the reasons why people are leaving, I want to know personally from you. Here's the first question that we will tackle for today, and we'll get our conversation started. Okay. And the question is, why do you feel people are no longer attending church? Why do you feel people are no longer attending church? Why do you feel people are no longer attending church? And so think about this question, take a moment to process. And when you think about this question, I want to hear what is your experience? You might have a personal experience, or it actually might be an experience from of people in your circle, friends and stuff, because it's not only you, but people that you've spoken to in your community that might not be attending or want to attend. And so let's get started. Looney, you're up.
Hi, everybody. So I actually had this conversation earlier with my therapist. For me, I have anxiety going physically back to church because I feel like I've experienced so much church hurt, and I feel like I only feel safe here. So like physically going to church just gives me so much anxiety, and I feel like I don't know how to go back to church and go back to the routine that was set before. So that's my experience.
Now, when you talk about that, because it's like it seems like the church, even the physical space, is a trigger, right? It's definitely a trigger for you. Like, can you give maybe an example of what hurt you in the past? One example of what hurt you in the past and how it affects you now.
I feel like the church only cared about me when I was singing. So now I just stop singing. I tell everybody I retired. So yeah, I don't sing anymore. And I feel like I have anxiety going back to singing, and I feel like I'm not comfortable with my own voice anymore. And I grew up singing, so it's kind of like crazy to me.
Mm. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing that. And what I got from you, Looney, was the fact that, church had become a place that I use you for your gifts, but I don't necessarily see you,
Exactly. Because like I remember there were times when I wouldn't sing praise team for the day, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I thought you didn't come to church today because you weren't singing on praise team." But I'm like, I was here this whole time, like just wasn't singing today. And it was like, "Oh, why are you not singing? You have to use your gifts." And I was like, I just didn't feel I felt like I had so much going on like in my life, and I just didn't feel like I was in a place where I can just go up and pretend. I'm like, I'm not here to perform. You feel me? So I'm like, I'm not going up there if I feel like I have to perform and not actually like praise God for real. So yeah.
Wow. That's powerful, Looney. And thank you so much for sharing that, because sometimes there's a lot of guilt trips that are given, especially when we're not using our gifts. If it's 1 day or 2 days, it's like, oh, what are you doing? And stuff like that. But fact of the matter is, everybody takes a break. Everybody should at least take a break. And people should be caring about others, not what I can offer you, right? Not that what I can offer you, but I see you as a person. And sometimes our church doesn't know how to do that. So I apologize for the experience that you have. But I am happy that you do feel safe here. Even if you're still working out, finding peace or safety in other spaces. I thank God that you actually feel safe here in this church community. Thank you so much for sharing. Jasmine, you're up.
Hi.
How are you?
Everyone? I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I want to start with saying like experiences I've heard from people, and then I'll say my own experience. So I grew up mostly there was like older Jamaicans in my church when I was growing up. Now it's branched off into a little bit more of a multicultural situation. But in that church, it was a lot of like finger pointing and pointing out, like I'm sure everyone knows, like your skirt is this length and you're wearing this, and to like strangers, to like new people, and it's just like so inappropriate. And why would you want to come back when people are like attacking you your first time there or your first few times at the church for what you're wearing, and you're just trying to go and get an experience with God? So that is something that I noticed all the time growing up. But for me, I've moved around a lot in the past, like I want to say 5 years for med school and everything else surrounding it. And I've had to like find a new church in a lot of places. And I'm a person that loves to serve in the church. I'm very aware that there's a lot of people that cause church hurt. And I try to look at it as like, these are people and people are always going to people. and people are always gonna have something to say, and they're gonna be imperfect. So I try to just not take things personally, but it's hard. But I like to serve wherever I go. And so if I go to a church and I feel like I don't feel the presence of God there, I will leave. And if there's like not a lot of churches in the area, I just don't feel like, if I can get a better experience connecting with God at home from like doing devotion or being on BTM or watching a sermon from one of my favorite pastors, I'd rather stay home and do that than go to a church where I'm going just for the sake of going and I don't feel any experience with God. And so there was a church when I was in Pittsburgh, um, and I was going there. It was like, it gave me like mega church vibes, which doesn't make me feel like I'm really experiencing God. So I went there and I was going back because the music was good and people were a little bit strange, like not as friendly. But one time I went back after like a month of not going, and this lady was like, I went over to like give her a big hug and say hi, and she was like, where you been? I ain't seen you in however long. She didn't say hi, she didn't give me a hug, she didn't like anything. She just was like so cold. I was like, oh wow. So that really turned me off, and it just confirmed everything I already felt about the church. Like I don't think I need to be here. So that was the reason why for me in that particular scenario. But I feel like that can be relatable to some people.
Absolutely. And you're so right. I was just recognizing that I realized that a number of people in church, even from the older generation, they don't know how to build relationships, like, or be a friend. I know it sounds simple, but I realize that they don't know how to, because when you hear some of the things that are done or said, it's not about them being perfect. Young adults are not looking for perfection. If anything, they're okay if you're not perfect. They're okay with that. It's the arrogance sometimes of wanting to appear perfect or wanting to more use me than develop a relationship with me. And even growing up, you knowing, like, for example, you knowing my mom or you seeing me run up in church doesn't necessarily mean you have a relationship with me. And I think people think that because they saw you growing up or because they saw you for a couple of times that they can say anything to you or behave in a kind of way, or and so that's something that I think we really need to be mindful of. And there was also something that you spoke about too, if I can remember it, that what I wanted to say about it, but it's not coming to me at this moment, but I'll remember at some point. I'll remember at some point. But oh yeah, so here was the other thing. The book was also talking about the fact that some people haven't had or found a church space or church community because they've moved. You know, their career has brought them to like a different area, different space, and so they just haven't had the opportunity to go out and find a new one, you know. And so thank you so much for sharing that aspect as well. Abby, you're up.
Hi.
Hey.
I know that a lot have shared about church hurt, and I too have my share of stories. But I wanted to bring in another perspective of something else that could have definitely made impact on the percent of people that go to church or continue in religion. When evolution started being taught in school, I think it made a lot of people challenge what they were taught and see God as more of a story, and what they were being taught from middle to high school as truth and incompatible with the Word of God. And I think especially in this nation, we saw a shift. I Googled it really quickly after I raised my hand. I think it started being taught in public school in 1925. And I wonder how that correlates with the research that you have, Devonte, about when the shift started. But yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind when you were talking and when you asked the question, just like how education has impacted people's belief in the Word of God as a book of truth. Even though archaeologists look to the Word of God, even though there are more manuscripts backing up the Word of God than there are many of the early writers that they look to, like Socrates, or probably earlier than that, I don't know. But just to say, it challenges the Word of God, and it's taught as truth in school.
Yeah, I would say definitely evolution, but not from this book per se, but evolution was definitely one of the starts of it. The book also talks about the fact that the social media age that we're now in, the access to information, the access to different opinions, voices, podcasts, you name it, has really challenged the quote unquote status quo and everything that you have believed growing up. And so it's a combination of a number of things. Also, what is defined as truth has changed throughout the centuries. In the past, truth was defined many times within the community, right? Maybe in the past, people would say, oh yeah, we know that the Bible is the truth. And I still believe that the Bible is the truth. But we're living in a time now where truth is validated if whatever person that you're seeing sees it as truth. And I'm not saying I agree with that. I don't agree with that. But I'm just telling you where we are as a culture. As a culture right now, especially within the cities, truth is truth as long as I believe it. That is the concept that people have, especially those that don't even have a religious experience or are not even Christian to begin with. In the past, it would have been like, oh, okay, I know the Bible's the truth. Now it's like, okay, you say the Bible's the truth. I mean, some people have the reaction, so what? You know? So once again, I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying that's a lot of where society is right now. Tammy, you're up. Hey, Chanel.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
We can.
Okay, awesome. Happy Sabbath, folks. Happy Saturday, everyone. Yeah, so this is kind of a hodgepodge of other experiences from people I know and also myself. But essentially, the youth not being listened to in the church. Didn't necessarily happen in every church that I went to, but I would say a good amount. Like if a young person wanted to start a movement or like start like a small group or do something different that maybe the older crew wasn't used to, they would kind of dismiss it or say, oh yeah, it needs to go through committee, and then it would be dead on the floor. And I think that turned a lot of people off, knowing that they weren't listened to, because they were young. And I just remember like when I listened to, like, I remember this one verse, I think it was First or Second Timothy. It was like, don't let anyone despise you because you're young. And that verse encouraged me, like definitely in terms of staying in the church. I was like, oh, this is not God that's doing this discouraging. This is human beings. Mm-hmm. So that was a really big one. And then just knowing that your voice is heard is pretty major. So I think a lot of people kind of got tired of that. And then also not being able to take friends to church because, they're going to be threatened of hellfire and their family and all that jazz. And instead of explaining things in a personal and friendly and the way Jesus would do it, just talking to people the way Jesus would, it's like this fear tactic, and people are that only works for a short period of time. It doesn't really work in the long term for anyone. So a lot of people, there would be like mass baptisms, and then a lot of people would get dropped, and a lot of people just kind of stop coming after that, because that it's not really a long-term solution, trying to scare people into doing something you want. So yeah.
And Tammy, to your point, what's really been said, two things. When you speak about those mass baptisms, it's not the fact that like what they call public evangelism doesn't work, but I've heard some people call it bait and switch. So we put this thing out, we put out this production, we get you to come, we get you all ramped up, we do the different music, you get all excited, you get baptized, we get the numbers, and it's an easy way to get people in. And then it's like, then we switch it up. We go back to our regular scheduled programming. And some people are wondering, well, that's not what I experienced for the last 3-4 weeks, right? This is totally different. Y'all seem like you were free and having a good time. And then all of a sudden it was just like, it was a bait and switch. Somebody else called it something else. But I don't know. Somebody called it a hit it and quit it type of thing. But that really upsets me. It's not to say that we shouldn't be doing evangelism and stuff like that, but I just think that it's definitely more important the time after the baptism to have people to be supported and loved and developed and have support groups, to just put all that work in, or put the work in to get them baptized. And sometimes I've heard people growing up and say, oh, when I got baptized, they just told me to go do it because my friend wanted to get baptized. Or when I got baptized, they just told me to do it because they didn't want me to go to hell, And so when I hear things like that, I just like, baptism is, we really steal somebody's opportunity to really have that moment with God, to choose God. We take that moment from them. And a lot of them, they live their lives based off of a false assumption, trying to be perfect, not understanding what Jesus did for them in the gospel and everything. And then last thing, I spoke to a conference official recently, and he was saying, if everybody leaves the church, or the youth leave the church, the young adults leave the church, how are we going to fix the problem? And one thing I had said to him was, well, some of the young adults, they said that they had stuck around, and what they noticed was even the ones that stuck around, they had to be 50 years old in order to be respected. And sometimes there still wasn't any change. And the last thing was the fact that even counselors or therapists, if somebody was in an abusive situation, they wouldn't tell somebody to go back into an abusive situation. They wouldn't. Do you think about it? I mean, you think about domestic abuse, but there's something called spiritual and emotional abuse. And so would you tell somebody to go back into an abusive situation, even when those people have not done any work? And this is, depends on what church it is. But if you haven't done any work to heal yourself or to get better, I'm basically placing you in the same context or the same environment as when you first got hurt. It doesn't make sense. Something has to be done. You can't just say, well, nobody in church is perfect, and then you put all the work on the person that's being hurt, and then you don't allow the people that are doing the hurting to make the adjustment. Let me go to EA. I'm not sure of your full name, but EA, I know you had your hand up.
Sorry, I kind of put my hand down because I realized like this is a very, very big question. Like I feel like there are a lot of reasons and a lot of factors to explain. And I think from what I've been hearing and what I've experienced and seen over the years, like the enemy is attacked from both sides. There isn't a one side at fault where it's like, if that side fixes itself, then the church will be fine. I that's not true. I think that there's attack on both sides, and you guys kind of mentioned that in some ways, but there are a lot more factors. I think there's a cultural factor, there's a philosophical factor, there's a social kind of like aspect to it. And there are a lot of different factors that cause that. And there's actual like a space thing, like a connection thing, like social media, for example. And yeah, so that's why I kind of put my hand down, because I'm like, there's a lot to explain or to talk about when it comes to why people are leaving the church. But I think for a lot of us, from my experience, and when I say a lot of us, I mean like Caribbean folks, like for a lot of us, I think it's the like toxic nature of the of, I don't want to say of the church because we are the church, but of common of most congregations in a sense. And I think part of that falls under the in a sense kind of a cultural factor where we're more we're more focused on maintaining a culture and tradition than the actual religion or the actual faith, right? The actual faith. So it's more like, we like the appearance, but we don't really care about the actual spirituality of it, right? It's like, and I think that's why sadly, a lot of parents they don't care if their kids don't understand, they don't care if their kids don't, any of that. What they want is, as long as you're there. As long as you're there, it's fine, but you don't necessarily need to be actually converted. Once you reach an age, you need to get baptized. I don't really need to know that you really have a true relationship with Christ, but you're at the age to be baptized, so you're going to get baptized, right? So there's a lot of that where it's like, it just needs to look good, right? There's no actual inward change. So I think that that kind of like a situation happens a lot in the Caribbean churches, and kind of maintaining the culture more than maintaining the faith or building the faith. So that's what I've experienced and that's what I've seen. But like I said, there are tons of reasons why this has happened, and the enemy has done a good job in dividing the church in that sense. But I think, if we focus on Christ as the person of Christ, and build with him, then that itself will bring us together, right? Because we'll be under that same mindset. But that's the challenge.
So, EA, is that your name, your full name, or?
No, that's my initial.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, unless you want to tell me your full name, I'm fine calling you EA. So, I just want to clear. I have a question for you. So the question is this: are you saying that simply not going to a church building and attending service, are you saying that are you saying, let me ask this question. I'll reword the question. Is simply sitting down in a church service an indication of your relationship with God?
No.
And if not, explain why.
Well, great example of that are the Pharisees, right? They played the role. I think that's kind of what I was saying. It's like, I think a lot of people play the role because they think in the role they are saved. That makes them Christian. But like Jesus says, these are they that testify of me, as in like the book that they're memorizing and the traditions that they're following and all of these things are supposed to lead them to a relationship. But they do it thinking doing those things is what saved them, but it's not. So doing church doesn't do anything for you if it doesn't lead you into a relationship or enhance your relationship with Christ. It just ends up being like like a cultish, like, being a tradition, just like any other tradition, but it serves no actual purpose when it comes to growth. So that's what I think. I think all these things like church services and whatever you do in church, the program, whatever, all of those things, the purpose, the reason they were created was to somehow enhance or elevate or create relationship with Christ. And if it doesn't do that, then you're doing it in vain.
That's a really profound statement, man. And the reason why I asked that is because, for a long time, the church, they were used to assembling in person. And what I've been realizing is churches have been taking advantage of the fact that people have a mindset that simply going to a building and doing a service is a church family or having a relationship with God. It's like, oh, where do you go to church? And the thing is that you simply, or a body of people simply going to a church building, nothing's wrong with that, but don't take advantage of that. And what I mean by that is, don't take advantage of the fact that just because you come to this place at a certain time and sit in these benches, but yet you don't have a relationship, or you're not going any deeper. I'm not saying this is every church, obviously, but we take it for granted the fact that we go to this space and we call it church. And sometimes we are not pushing ourselves to grow any deeper. And the other thing is, there are some families that they're going through hell at home, but yet, like you said, they play the role. They're like, okay, lights, camera, action. Let's go. Let's sit together and let's show people that we're a family. So during these 2 hours or during these couple of hours, let's make sure that we're all together so people can see that, we're close. We love each other. We got this. Somebody can be at home and not even having a relationship with God or not even close to him and sit in a service and be in a service and have perfect attendance. It's almost like you go to school, you have perfect attendance, but you're not paying attention at all, or you're not even tapped in at all. So it's a very similar concept. Erica, you're up.
Sorry, I was okay. Hi everyone. Be here. I just love just the different perspectives that I am hearing. And for me personally, I would say there's been a few different things. It's like, one, growing up in church, right? It takes a second sometimes for the why am I doing this to kick in? I mean, like, and when you're raised in a situation, you might not have like the full scope of understanding. And I remember like when I went away for college, obviously, I mean, not obviously, but in my college neighborhood, which was very small, I wasn't acquainted with the neighborhood. And also there wasn't really a church on campus or anything until like, I think maybe my junior year. And then we were all excited because it was like, okay, this is something that's familiar to us at home and we got to choose to go. And that was really nice. And also the Black community at my school was very, very small. I went to a PWI, so it was like, a culture shock. So anyway, there's that aspect of it. Being able to make the choice to go and knowing why you're going is a big part of it. And like coming into age and realizing, or just coming into more relationship with God and taking a look at your life and saying, okay, like there's a reason why I'm doing this. I would say as an adult, I've been like called back to church. So which is like really interesting. Right before the pandemic, I was stressed out and tired of church personally, because I felt like after I got back from college, I was I was still taking advantage of my Sundays. Like, you know, I don't have to do anything, but I would come visit my church. Like, I was like, okay, I'll come back for a little while. And then they trapped me by asking me to join the praise and worship team. And I was like, oh my freaking goodness. Like, I always wanted to just like sit down and enjoy the service. You know what I mean? So there was no opportunity where I could just go as a regular person in the congregation and not have to do anything. And I think I also scare easily, and I'm not like a super committed person, right? So like asking me to do anything, and then I'm really nice, so I'm probably going to say yes, and then I'm gonna feel guilted, and then I feel like, again, my choice has been taken away from me, or like I gave away my my choice to go. And so when the pandemic came, I was really excited because my church tried to do the virtual thing and it wasn't really working out, and I just phased out. Like I just I phased out. Like I was like, "Woo, this is my opportunity to catch my breath," and I disappeared. So this year, you know, but you know, my relationship with God, like I realized over time, like it's really, really important. And so as I was getting back into, and then I joined, you know, I've been being a part of BTM, which was really nice. And I like the discussion based aspect of it, which was very different from a normal church service. And I appreciated like the perspectives as everybody bouncing off of each other. And like, that's really, really nice. And then so earlier this year, I started going back to church. And then sometimes I haven't been able to make it back to the building because of time and like, you know, things happen and life happens and you have to take care of different responsibilities and stuff like that. But it was funny because my pastor, he was just like, yeah, I'm scared to ask you to do anything, but I'm just so happy you're here. I'm scared to even ask you to do anything. I said, word, like, I'm glad I'm glad you know, don't ask me to do. Like, I really do believe that a church that is that's gonna grow and be successful. And when I say successful, I mean just like accomplishing the mission of what God intends for that space to do. You're not gonna have to force anybody to do anything. Like I feel that way all the way down to tithes and offering. I really believe that like God will sustain the space with people. And also a ministry that is proving that God is real and that he does what he says he's going to do. And the evidence of who he is shining through the people in the church. And so I feel like because of how I've turned my life over personally, I'm more of a ministry walking around because I'm so excited because I know what God has done for me. And that didn't really come from the building. I'm glad that I was raised in church because it gave me that foundation. But when I went back, I had something, you know, I had that bond there, and I'm thankful for how I was raised. But, you know, I also realized, okay, like it's not all in the building, but fellowship is important. And so there's that balance. But I do believe God will sustain any space that is doing what it's supposed to do, whether it's financially, spiritually. It's not about having a mega church. It's not about, you know, forcing people to get up and sing just so you have people up there. My church has been stripped all the way down. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. My church has been stripped all the way down, like since the pandemic, right? And I love my church and I grew up in that church to the point where when I went back, there were like no musicians. And I liked it that way. I liked it that way because we just got straight to the word and we got straight to talking about what we needed to talk about, and like without like dragging the service. And like, yeah, some people are blessed through praise and worship, and like they did have some level of that, but I just felt like the rawness of the service, I was able to get with it. All the bells and whistles is not really my thing. But you know, it is some people's thing. But that's, you know, that's my story. That's kind of like why I left, where I come back, and like how I balance my, you know, my relationship with being in the church building and, you know, my relationship with God overall.
You know, before you go, Erica, you mentioned you're a walking, I don't know if you said walking ministry, you said walking something. And
Yes.
And it caught my like attention because you're right. Like we're not supposed to just be just a blessing to the people in the building, but supposed to go out, you know. What I find amazing is the word for church is called ecclesia. It's like a Greek word, and that meaning of church, it's God's called out people. In Greek, that meaning is God's called out people. But if the people just want to stay in and they never push themselves to go out, and that can look different ways, right? You can be doing stuff on your job. You can be, there's many ways you can express the gospel or tell people about Christ and stuff. You don't have to be on a corner, on a street, yelling at people and stuff. Some people do that. That's not my ministry. And that's not my style. But like you said, going out to the people, going out to the community, there's so many people that have needs. There's so many people, and especially like young adults, or I would say, I mean, a number of us are millennials, but millennials, Gen Z, the new generation that's coming up is Generation Alpha. They're going to be more and more concerned about community. And if the church is not reaching the community or being a blessing to them, then what are we doing? You know? And yeah, the going out with tracks, it just hurts my soul. It really does. It really does. I think it's just so impersonal. I think it's very impersonal. Imagine you don't have a relationship with anybody, you're just giving out a track. And not to say you can't ever share a track and stuff like that, but just giving out a piece of paper with no connection. It's so much easier when there's a connection developed, and you care about people, not because you're trying to get them inside of a building, but you just care about people. And then over time, maybe they'll ask you about God or about a relationship with him and stuff like that because they trust you. But yeah, the tracks. Let me see if I missed anything in the chat. Oh yeah, go ahead, Tammy.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so my thing about the tracks is that like you were saying, you said it as I was writing it. But essentially it really matters about the relationship. Oh, hold on. Yeah, it really matters about with the relationship. So like, for example, me and my church group, this is the one I've talked about times before that I really just had a great experience with growing up. We would go out into the community, feed the homeless, spend the afternoon with them. We would, have rap sessions where it's basically like young people, small group where we just talk about life and faith. And then we would like eat lunch together, bring lunch together. And then we would also, after we would eat together, I think it was like either once a month or once every other month, we would go out into the community, into the neighborhood, and we would pass out tracts. However, we would spend we would basically spend the rest of the day out, and we'd go into different groups. But we would go out, and then I just remember we would go into people's homes if they would allow us, and we just have conversation with them about life and their faith and why they do or don't have a relationship with God. We'd ask them if they had any prayer requests and pray with them and talk with them, and then offer them, of course, reach out to them and give them our church's information. And if anybody had a special connection, they would share their numbers. And they would be able to do maybe a Bible study or study together. And so for me was just like a really amazing experience, just seeing like that community and reaching out into the community that way, and just like caring about people. That always just gave me a really great taste in terms of handing out tracts. It didn't necessarily feel like it was just something we just did. As opposed to when I went to certain conferences and they were like, oh, we're going to hand out tracts and blah, blah, blah. And then it kind of just felt like methodical and robotic. So I just got to see the two differences in those, but I really did love the community aspect in terms of that. So it was a little bit different, but I did enjoy that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tam, for that. I have a quick question. I'm going to share some more information on the book and talk to you guys about the list of reasons that this book, The Great Dechurching, has listed out as why people that once attended church are not going back. But before I do that, I see some names on here, on Ruthie or even on Marion. I'm thinking about thinking about multiple generations, right? Seeing what church was earlier, and then also seeing what church is now, with being able to compare, or either one of you, do you want to share the experience of what church was like for you growing up, and then what it is for you now? Feel free, no pressure. But I would like to hear your perspective on that too, to see the comparison, because we only see, I'm just turning 30 this year, so we only see that we only see I only see it from that perspective a little bit, speaking to people that are older, of course, and getting that experience, but I'm curious. So feel free, if you would like to answer that question, feel free. EA, go ahead. I see your hand.
Sorry. So I guess I'm kind of part of the older folks.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
So like, because I was around in the 90s, like church definitely changed. I think the 90s were like a big changing decade for society, including church. So one thing I will say, like growing up in like a Haitian church, like it was very like we very much kept to ourselves. Like I remember growing up, I've never heard of BT. Well, I'm from Boston, so for those of you, I don't know where y'all from, but like I've never heard of BT, and BT was part of our conference, right? So we were like one of the only churches in Southern New England, and then Boston Temple was right there in Boston, and I've never heard of it because it's an English church, right? I've never heard of any English programs. I've never heard. All we knew was the like Salem, Philly, like the Haitian churches, the fellow Haitian churches. When we did a program, it was only them. It's like that was the world. For a while, being a little kid, I thought Adventism was a Haitian thing. Like I really did. I thought it was a Haitian thing. Haitians developed it, Haitian grown, like, and a lot of times in the sermons and stuff, they would preach against the English churches and saying how those churches are now real Christians. So I remember that. And then we, growing up in a church, there was a lot of, the songs are in French, but we don't speak no French. So we memorize it, but we have no idea what we're saying. The sermons oftentimes in French. So like a lot of times all of us young kids growing up, which we're in church, we're in the programs, we're in Pathfinders, we're in whatever, all the programs, but it's like to us, it's just something you did. There was no like actual understanding. You know what I mean? And once you get to a certain age, like the late teens, it's time to get baptized, right? So all of a sudden, you're getting a lot of pressure from the pastor, from your parents about getting baptized. I remember like there was no concern as to whether or not we are growing spiritually. The more concern was, are we behaving? Right? Like, are we, making them look good? Right. So once you get to an age, it's like, okay, we're gonna add you to a department, whether you ask for it or not. Right. We're gonna add you because it's gonna look good. We're gonna have a young person in the board that's gonna make it look like, young people are involved, but it's not like you actually get to, impact. So that's one thing I remember. But the shift happened. Oh yeah, there was never before the earlier 90s, there was no two service. Now I know it's a common thing now, like an English service. But I remember one of the reasons that happened was because something that went down in right? Like I don't know who knows this history, but like there was this couple young people, they got involved in some really bad stuff and it became public. Like somebody went to jail. right? And it became public, and that made look bad. And so that's when started to like, okay, we need to like give the youth like, you know, their service, you know, something where they get to do stuff they understand, like do have it in English. Because I remember the older folks would push against the idea of an English church, the idea of an English service, because it's like, oh, that's the church divided, you're Haitian first, that kind of mindset. But that shifted, and then other churches started to do that. But that was something that I noticed that shifted. Other things started to shift, like the you know, the singing, like there was more English stuff in the Haitian churches, but before it was like pure, it's like you're in Haiti again. You know, whether you speak the language or not.
Wow. That was eye-opening. Even when you spoke about the fact that with your church, it was like, oh, the English Christians, they're not really Christians. That was very eye-opening. And then you also spoke about baptism, how it was like a almost like seen as like a rite of passage. It was almost like oh, this is the coming of age. Like baptism is like a bar mitzvah or a quinceañera, right? Type of thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of steal someone's opportunity to make that decision on their own, you know. Instead of it coming to them naturally, it's like, well, you look like you're at the right age, so let's do it, type of thing. But thank you so much for that. And I think even in New York, there was a lot of division for years. I think, or even Don told me, like, for a long time, she didn't know that they were Haitian Adventist churches, because they never combined with the English churches, even in New York. It's like now they're doing it, you know, over the last couple of years, they're having unity days and stuff. But I think because coming to the country, and then sometimes people force you to lose your identity and lose your culture. You can feel it, like they're trying to strip it. And so many people, they're like, okay, we're going to come together. Because if they're going to push against what we're doing or who we are, we're going to make sure we stick together. But there's a far extreme where instead of just sticking together, you do to them what they've done to you, you know, what people have done to you. So thank you so much for sharing that. Marion, your hand is up.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Hey,
praise the Lord for this conversation. I can't believe we're having it, but praise the Lord. Or you know what, just like EA, you know, like, so I started in the church, I think when I was about 7 years old. So I started going to a Japanese church. And there was a heavy kind of dialect. So I didn't really understand what was going on, but I love the culture, the Japanese culture. And it was a tiny little congregation, but I loved it so much because after you know, the sermon, after the service was over, we would go into the fellowship section, and we would have all this amazing Japanese food, and then we would watch movies about Japan. And so it's not Haiti, not, you know, America, but Japan. And so that was my introduction, and I absolutely loved it. But I didn't have the relationship because I was young, and so we didn't understand the relational part. It was just, you know, learning about Jesus, and, you know, the little felt boards, you know, and how they put the little felt Jesus on there with the little lambs and all this stuff. And I loved all of that. My siblings all got baptized at 12, and so I was anxious to get to be 12 because I wanted to be baptized, not understanding what any of that meant. But I also understood that at 12, I became, you know, I moved into a different, you know, group. So you're more of the young adults. And I didn't like that part because now you actually had to study the Bible. You had to read the Bible, and I did not understand. I liked the felt boards. And, but also I had friends in school that, you know, they went to their churches, and choir was the thing at that time in Denver growing up. I mean, it was like kind of the battle of the youth choirs. And so I asked my dad if I could leave the church and join the Baptist church. And he wasn't going to church at all. So it was just us going to church with my mother. So he was like, yeah, you're 12 now. You can go, you know, wherever you want to go. And so I started attending a different church, and it was all about the choir. Again, it wasn't about relationship. It wasn't even about sitting and understanding and the sermons or anything. It was about youth choir, youth group, and what that was all about. And that was amazing to me. That was an amazing experience. And then as again, so all of this was really it was never relational. It was really never relational. So growing up, when I prayed for forgiveness when I sinned. And I just figured, okay, I'm good with God because I'm sinning and I'm praying for forgiveness. And so I'm clear. I was just, it was a lot, but I think it's like you said, it's just a combination of many things. And then when I came back into the faith was when David and I got married, and I came back into the faith and started going to a church where we were asked to take on different roles. And so I became the AY leader, and I went to my first board meeting as an AY leader. And I remember I was pregnant, and oh my gosh, was that a shock to me, because they prayed this beautiful prayer over the board meeting, what was getting ready to happen. And as soon as they said amen, they started, going in on the pastor. And they were going in on him so hard that I started crying, because I said, wait a minute, I am confused, because I'm just, I'm a baby Christian, and I just took on this role as AY leader, and now you're going off on the pastor, and we just prayed this heavenly prayer. And it was all about politics. And they said to me, oh, Sister Marion, it's okay. This is just business. This is just business. Don't take this personal. And that was a cultural shock for me. And from then on, I tell you, it was very hard for me to really to stay connected to the church, even though that was our whole ministry. That's what we did. As you know, David and I, we went around from church to church and give our testimony, and we did concerts, and we still do it. But I had to learn that it wasn't about the church. Like I think the brother was saying earlier, how the Pharisees, they thought because they showed up that qualified them as being saved. And that wasn't it. It was about forming that personal relationship. And I'll tell you when it started to happen is when our family, the Lewis family, came together and we started studying Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. That thing turned my life around. It turned a lot of family members' lives around, because it was about that personal relationship, experiencing God one-on-one. So that was my experience. I don't think things have changed a whole lot, to be honest with you, Devonte. It turned my children off. It really turned my children off. The politics, the do's and the don'ts. And even though at home we tried to instill in them the relational part, but again, we were also a part of that culture. So we only taught them what we knew to teach them. But we really did try to explain to them that it's about a personal relationship, and that dad and mom are flawed, and we need God the way you need God. So we try to teach them that, but I tell you, a lot of things happened, and it just pushed our children away. And Milan went away to college, and they started teaching. And even though she went to a Christian college, they were teaching this think on your own. And when it came to the Bible, they were teaching her false things in the Bible about God and in the Old Testament. Just all kinds of things, which pushed her away. And then social media took over from there. And our kids just all went with whatever was popular, whatever made sense, science and all these things. And that's where they are now. And so yeah, it's been a tough road, an interesting road, but we know that God is faithful. And because he said to raise them up in the way, train them up in the way that they should go. And when they are old, they will not depart. That's what we're trusting him for. So I hope that shed some kind of light.
Marion, that was amazing. That was amazing. Couple of things I have questions for you before you go. At first, I didn't know you were AY leader. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, I was AY leader for a couple years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I do remember Steven told me that he did go there. I didn't know that you were there as well. And
That's right.
when you said about the board meeting, I already knew what you were gonna say when you said they did a prayer and then they just let each other have it.
Yes.
What they do. That's what
I don't understand. I never understood that because these were supposed to be the leaders of the church, and I mean, I went in with such an innocent, pure heart. And that's what the pastor said to me and David, because David came in as I forgot what role David was playing as well. And so that's why we were both in that board meeting. And I tried to leave my position shortly after that because I was so hurt and crushed by the people of the church and the leadership of the church. And he said, I didn't ask you to be AY leader and David to be elder in training because you were qualified. He said, I called you because you had the heart to do the position. And that's why I asked you to do it. And so I stayed on for a little while longer, but I couldn't stay a whole lot longer because it was just, I was innocent and I was a baby in Christ. And I was so hurt that church people were so unkind, especially to the pastor, who was a gentle, God-fearing, God-loving soul.
Wow. That is mind-blowing. And what blew my mind as well when they said to you, oh, don't take it to heart.
Yeah.
No, don't take it to heart.
Don't take this personal.
Don't take it personal.
Business.
Yeah.
This is only business. And so when we started our thing up here, we were non-denominational. We just were like, nope, we are not under anybody's. We're not under anybody. We are just doing this as unto the Lord, and whoever comes, and we're just preaching from the word, and that's it. And God really blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even people from my church would be like, why do they call it non-denominational? And I was just like, the people that used to ask me about it, I was just like, your heart's not even in the right place. You're not thinking about loving people and everything. Because when you talk about the Henry Blackaby book and Experiencing God, I remember that book because that's how I came to get baptized.
Wow.
That's the exact, Uncle Stephen's pop gave me that book.
That's right.
I memorized that book back and from front to back, all the steps, had a relationship with God and what God did for Abraham. And I was just like, whoa, it was something that it was groundbreaking for me, even though it's something that we should have known all along.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? When I read it, I was like, whoa, I didn't want to get baptized out of fear when people were telling me, oh, I don't want you to go to hell. I didn't want to get baptized because my friend was doing it. But when I sat down and I read that book, that changed my life. I had no doubts that I wanted to get baptized. Yeah,
it changed my life too. It changed my life too. And that's by Henry Blackaby, Tammy. Yeah. Henry Blackaby. Yeah, very good. For those who really don't even understand this whole thing, that's a good study.
Yeah. Didn't we do it at the retreat as well? I feel like we did it for some of the sessions.
We may have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
thank you for listening.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Because there are some things I didn't even know. I was like, whoa, that was good on Marion. That was really good. Really good. And last but not least, just want to share this with you before you go on, Marion. When they put me on the board and I was like, I think I was like maybe 20, 22 or something. They put me on the board and one lady came to me and said, oh, I was so worried that you being on the board, you would see, what happens and be turned off. And I remember saying to her, oh no, I wasn't turned off. You guys act like this outside the board meeting.
Oh my goodness.
And she started busting out laughing. I said, no, y'all act like this outside the meeting. Nothing's surprising.
Oh my God.
Yeah. If anything, I was like, well, at least I have a platform to speak out.
Right.
So if I hear any nonsense.
Yeah.
So
and you know what, that's interesting, Devonte, because I did, when people start to show their true colors, then from then on, you kind of do see it.
Yeah.
You know, so there was always this tug of war. Then there was always this tug of war in that sweet little church. And, you know, oh my God, it was so divided. It was so sad that that church was divided, because it was a sweet little church.
Yeah. So I was really bold for that, but it's something that when I look back, I'm like, I'll do it again. All right. So Tam, wait, Ruthie, did you want to say something before I go to Tammy? Okay. Tammy, go ahead, and then I'll share some information about some of the findings of why people were leaving based on the book. Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I was just kind of co-signing that like the prayer and then going in on the pastor. I thought that was really interesting because the same church I was saying that I had a really great experience in growing up. My pastor, that's funny, 12 is an interesting number. I was also baptized at 12. And by my pastor, very loving, very open, very honest, very out there pastor. He was just great, just very, very to the point, and just a really cool guy. Like, there was no pretension, there was no, it just felt like he was speaking authentically about the word and about life. He would, bring up his experiences with being a barber in New York, and being from Israel and all that kind of stuff. It was just a really awesome experience. And then sometime later, there was just so much infighting between the leadership and him, and I feel like they just basically wanted to usurp his position. And then once all that happened, all the infighting that was going on, and the attacking of him, I just remember my mom and I had left that church, and a bunch of other people did too. And ever since then, like, the downfall of that church, like, was very quick, just very quick. It was just really, really ugly, and it just really broke my heart how, like, everything was so beautiful and then it became so ugly. So that was like a huge trajectory of my entire life. Like, that's how I ended up in the Messianic Jewish congregation, and I hadn't been back to the Adventist church for like a good 12 years. So that was like a huge turning point in my life as well. So
Thank you so much, Tammy, for that. Let me share this with you guys. I just want to thank everybody, Tammy, Marion, and everybody else that spoke, Erica, and gave really some great perspectives and different reasons, why people are leaving. And really appreciate that. That gives us even more of a fuller perspective on how big this thing is. This is serious, guys. And please remember, don't blame it on COVID. The decline has been happening even before COVID. If anything, COVID just speeded, basically, definitely speeded the process for everybody. Okay, but it was already on a decline. It's not like COVID hit. It's like, oh, now we have a problem. No. We had a problem even since the 1990s. Studies are showing. And for those that had just jumped on late, we were speaking about this book, The Great Dechurching. And it talks about how over 40 million adults that used to attend church have left the church. Okay, 40 million adults. And just to repeat this, the three time periods where the church had experienced the most growth was the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, and also the time after the Civil War. So we've been on a decline, and even the 1990s, that's what started the major decline. Okay, so for those that came on late, just to repeat that. And so let's look here on some of the reasons why people have been leaving based on this book. So it says here, who are the dechurched? To adequately address the Great Dechurching, we must first understand who is leaving and why. Some have suggested that what would have naturally happened in more social realms over the next 10 to 15 years was accelerated by the recent political, racial, and pandemic turmoil. Carlos Losado, in a 2020 Washington Post article, reported, "The virus isn't transforming us. The virus isn't transforming us. It's speeding up the changes already underway." Others have suggested that as our culture becomes less accommodating and even hostile to the Christian faith, we simply get a clearer picture of who is really committed to that faith and a sort of purification of the church. Thomas Kidd, author and researcher professor at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, writes, "We're not so much concerned with mere church members, but regenerate church members." Still others claim that we are doing this to ourselves. A May 2022 article in The Atlantic claims, "The movement that spent 40 years at war with secular America is now at war with itself." Let me read that again. The movement that spent 40 years at war with secular America is now at war with itself. And the result is a fracturing of the American church. Who was correct? It says here, the data from our survey suggests they all might be. Dechurching is happening everywhere. No group of people is immune from the Great Dechurching. The dechurched are almost even split between men and women. And if anybody's wondering about the Adventist church, even with the North American division, the church has been declining since Ellen White died. Okay? Actually, maybe next week I'll show you there. I have statistics, I have a graph on the studies. It's open, it's public information. The church has been on a decline since 1914, 1915, and now we're in 2023. So that gives you some context. Let me keep reading. So once again, dechurching is happening everywhere. No group is immune to it. The dechurched are almost evenly split between men and women, 52% and 48% respectively. I was surprised about that. According to our study, Roman Catholics, Protestants, and those who identify as other Christian have all dechurched equally at 32%. In the Protestant tradition, Presbyterians lead the dechurching, losing about 45% of their attenders over the last 25 years. This is largely due to dechurching in the mainline Presbyterian church. How about Methodists? Methodists follow at 37%, Baptists at 29%, and Pentecostals at 26%. By generation, the baby boomers, listen to this, by generation, the baby boomers, those born between 1946 and 1964, are dechurching in larger numbers, as more than 35% of the boomers living today have stopped attending church. This is about twice the size of millennials. Millennials that have stopped attending church are 17% and 25%. Can you imagine this? Wow, interesting. Let me keep reading. Which is not a surprise, as more baby boomers went to church in the first place, which gives them more opportunity to make this shift. Black and white Americans are dechurching in comparable numbers, 26% and 27% respectively. Hispanic Americans are experiencing the least dechurching at 14%. And somewhat perplexingly, 34% of Asian Americans have dechurched. Unsurprisingly, sexual orientation, listen to this, sexual orientation is a strong indicator of church attendance. It says here, according to the 2020 elective study at Harvard University, a heterosexual man is almost 3 times as likely to attend church at least once a year than a gay man. A heterosexual woman is 1.5 times more likely to attend church at least once a year than a gay woman or anyone who identifies as bisexual. While our study did not focus on dechurch LGBTQ+ people, they were included in the study. they were included in the study, and we can at least say that they left for different reasons. Some left because they felt the church was too restrictive of their sexual freedom, but others left because they didn't feel like they were welcome, often because their churches either didn't adequately address the issue or addressed it in a harsh and insensitive manner. To close off, a couple other reasons why people are leaving, or why people are leaving, I should say. There was one large group that stopped attending church without initially intending to do so. Some moved to a new city with the intention of finding a church, but never took that next step into a faith community. So I say that many young professionals prioritize personal networks around their careers, and as a result, found themselves disconnected from a local church. Next one, some families had prioritized children's sports and other activities that were happening on the days of worship, maybe on Saturday, Sunday, respectively, depending on what denomination you're from. Then there are those who stopped attending church because of COVID. They developed new rhythms and now prefer those new activities over their worship experience at a particular physical space. We call this group the casually dechurched. Others, though, experienced genuine pain that led them to lose hope in the institution of the church or the Christian faith altogether. Some of you guys spoke about this. The list of these points of trauma and frustration is long, but it includes spiritual and physical abuse in the church, hypocrisy, among church members and leaders, sexual ethics, political syncretism, political disagreement, suffering, racism, bigotry, perceived lack of real answers to world's problems. By the way, when we talk about racism or prejudice and so on, let me give you an example. When we talk about racism, during the time of 2020, and even years before that, the time span of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd dying and everything that was going on, the president of the GC, right? He gave, and one of the responses was just to give an edible arrangement. Just to give an edible arrangement to the family of those that died, when you could have done a number of things, right? And of course, we're not saying that a person can't change, you can get better, but to be culturally, to be culturally respective and to kind of read the room, like not just reading this room, but reading the cultural climate. That's a room within and of itself, knowing that when these things are happening, what's the most appropriate thing to do? Not even as an individual, but asking around, what can we do as a church and so on, but not edible arrangement, So let me keep going. Let me keep reading. My gosh. Here's another reason. Perceived lack of relevance or real answers to the world's problems. Some in this group are victims of pastoral malpractice. Some are victims of the draw of the world and the flesh. We call this group the dechurch casualties. Okay. And then mental health. Last one, mental health. Mental health is an issue of our study. We looked at the mental health of dechurched evangelicals, and it became clear that anxiety, depression, loneliness, and suicidal thoughts were major factors in their lives. When asked to rate themselves on a scale of 0 to 100 in these areas, with 0 being very negative and unhealthy, and 100 being very positive and healthy, they scored 39 on anxiety, 34 on depression, 35 on loneliness, and 25 on suicidal thoughts. There is strong scientific evidence that supports the correlation between church attendance and improved physical mental health. But when asked whether or not they felt their church could handle these mental health conditions, many said that they were not ready. So with that, I know that was a lot, but I gave you different things to think about. anything that really caught your attention, or the reason people were leaving, in terms of whether it was the racism or the mental health. It was a list of different things, but anything that caught your attention, even the LGBTQ plus, right, community. Some were saying that they just didn't feel loved to even come. So any thoughts on that, Sunflower?
Wow. This is a big and heavy topic. Church hurt. And I feel like a lot of us have experienced this, which is why we're here. This is our safe space, you know. For LGBT, I have a few friends who are in church who are LGBT, and you know, we're always talking about this, and they just don't feel comfortable to be themselves, and a lot of them are Caribbean, so you already know one. Let's not even talk about religion, let's just talk about being Caribbean. To be gay and be Caribbean is literally something that'll get you stoned. You know, like, this is death. So just imagine you already feel like that, and you come to a place that's supposed to be a refuge, and they treat you worse than people out there, you know? So this is like, how do you stay in a place that makes you feel like that? How are you comfortable in a place like that? Where do you turn, you know? And then we talk about the manipulation, just being manipulated, and just having people tell you that, oh, God doesn't love you because you're gay. Like, God doesn't love you because of this. Oh, God is this, God is that. No, God is love. God may not be happy because of your actions, but he's definitely like happy because of you, you know, like the person that you are, the being that you are, that's what he's focused on. But it's just so hard, because when you've experienced something like that, it's very, very difficult to believe that there is a safe space, or that there is a place for you to be that doesn't judge you. And it's just like, even your parents, you know, your parents in the church, your parents this, and they're concerned about their image. They're concerned about how this is going to make them look, not even thinking about your feelings. So now it becomes like a mental health issue, because your feelings and your thoughts and your presence, your existence, the validity of everything that you feel, it's now being questioned. So like, I remember last week Aunt Ruthie was talking about safe space, you know, like us going out in the world. And what we learn here, this is literally what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to create safe spaces for everybody else who is in the church. Eventually, we'll get back into the church. I do feel like, me personally, God is calling me to get back into it, whether it's playing piano, whether it's singing. Also, I have a ministry with the children as well, you know. And I do believe that I'm definitely, you know, being called for that, you know, be it singing with them or just being with them. It makes me sad that people go through this, because this is not how it's supposed to be. This is not what God intended. But of course, this world is kind of not the way God intended, but yet we're here. So it's just a lot. And I feel for these people. So I definitely, the safe space that you have provided for us, I am very happy, because now it's our turn to go out there and help those that have been in the church hurt, because we have been in the church hurt, and look at us now. We're healing exponentially. We're growing. We're going through things. Trauma
causes the brain to rewire, but so does growth, so does healing. The fact that we are here and we are each other's village, we're here together. This is what we have to provide for other people. And it's not going to be a safe space, but the initiation starts with us. So this is our duty as the safe space. We got to go out there. Like, you know, as much as I don't want to, Devonte, you know. Like, you know me, but nah, like it's bigger than us. It's bigger than all of us. Literally, we have to go out there. We got to be the safe space for everybody else.
That's so good. That's good. So good, Sunflower. And I love that you really placed it on like this safe space here, but not limiting it to just that, right? Like, wait a second, there was a safe space created for us, and we know that it's there, but now I can personally go out and be a safe space for others. And you can't go out and be a safe space unless you've learned to be safe with yourself. You know, many times we're not even safe with our own selves and our own thoughts and weaknesses and everything. But once you learn how to do that and you're embracing this space here, then you say, wait a second, I know what I've experienced. I know what God has done for me, despite where I'm coming from. And now I want to make sure that somebody else that's down and out, that's feeling depressed or going through whatever it is, you know, whatever the trauma is, that they know that no matter what, the space is not perfect, but there's a safe space. Safe does not be perfect. Even when you go to those other places, right? Once you found a safe space, you go to those other places, you guys are going to be growing so much that like you're gonna know that when they say certain things about you or they're hard-headed and stuff like that, those are signs of broken people. Those are signs of broken people. You have a whole new mindset, you know? Sometimes they say those things or they act that way because they even act that way with their own selves. You know, many people are very critical with their own selves, or many people even hate their own selves. And so when they look outside to others, they treat people exactly how they treat themselves. You know, and so thank you so much, Sunflower, for pointing that out. Aunt Ruthie.
I felt something when you spoke about the baby boomers.
Yeah.
You know, the percentage, you know, at which they're leaving.
Yeah.
And all along as we've been talking, I've been in and out. I'm so sorry I didn't hear everything, but I've been thinking that the same issues that the young people have expressed, you know, that have affected why you're no longer interested in going to church, are the same issues that my generation, the baby boomers, have faced. Because I remember the church hurt. I mean, being, you know, practically slapped in the face. Well, you know what I mean. Because you didn't get to Sabbath school on time, or you didn't come to Sabbath school, or, you know, you're a musician. Musicians especially get a hard time because, you know, it would be nice if somebody paid you, but then you feel guilty because, you know, you're supposed to give your services for free. So they say, even though you spent so much time and you spend so much money developing your craft. So, you know, you actually are a minister of anyway, you know, and then there are the mental health issues and the LGBTQ. Those things have existed way back when. It's just that there wasn't a name for it then. You know, we'd hear rumors about stuff, and you know, look how many of us were molested and violated, you know. So the issues have remained the same. I don't know why we stayed there. I think we stayed there because we thought it was well, I know I stayed because I thought that I would go to hell if I didn't, you know, if I left, you know. But I wanted to say, in addition to what Sunflower said, I liked what Sunflower said about us going back into the environment. But I think that we go back in with the knowledge that we are being motivated by Christ.
Mm-hmm.
He's our motivation. He's our strength. When we are treated in a bad way, he's who we rely on. Because, if you go back in there and you're like, okay, I can do this, the enemy knows how to whip you around and he knows exactly what buttons to push. So I think that when we do go back, because I've been feeling that too, Sunflower, I've been feeling that too. We rely heavily on God, which is what we have been learning here with the Monday night, with the services on Sabbath, with the Monday night book club. Look, we're feeding our minds. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's what God asked us to do. And that's what BTM has been encouraging. Our Bible studies on Tuesday night. The fact that we all love to talk to each other and we share, and we learn from each other. I've learned so much since being on this platform, And then I was thinking too, and forgive me, who said we have to go to church to meet God? Okay. He said, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. We're assembling. When I meet with Marian and David, I'm assembling, so that's what I had to say.
Well, I think you make an excellent point, right? In the past, we didn't always have technology and Zoom and all that, to meet virtually, but now we do. Like, you still have an opportunity to meet in person and things like that. The church has always had an opportunity to do that. The early church did that. They met in homes. They met together, right? But thank God for technology, that I'm grateful, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have known the 90 plus of you that even came to the retreat, I wouldn't have known, because I grew up in New York. Everybody didn't grow up in New York. The fact that this person's from Florida or this person's from Georgia, or California, there so many different spaces, and so I'm personally grateful for that. So remind yourself that when we talk about like this group here, you are a church. This is the church body. It's a church body. And you have to get that mindset. Church is not a place you go to for 2 hours. We've had that mindset. And then, because some people think, okay, church is a place I go to for 2 hours. And then what happens when you leave the church building? You're not the church anymore? No, you're still the church throughout the week. It's the body of believers. You don't stop. You don't walk into the building, the front door, and say, all right, I'm the church now. And then you leave after whatever program after you eat and say, all right, see you next Saturday or see you next Sunday, whatever it is. See you later. Let me go back to my rest of my life. No. The church, thank God you have an opportunity to meet in person in a building or meet online in a building. Thank God for both options. But please remember, if you're truly a Christian, if you're truly the church, you don't take that for granted. How I consider it an honor to be the church, but to pick it up and drop it whenever we feel like it, what does that say to God? And last thing, when we think about the LGBTQ community, like what you were talking about on Ruthie, a great mentor of mine told me how there was a guy, and he had told the church, he had been going to services, he'd been told the church that he did have, feelings for the same sex. But he said he was really growing there and had come to want a relationship with God and wanted to give his life over to Christ. And he was going to get baptized, and there were members in that same community that heard about it and ended up killing him. Before he could get baptized. And so when we talk about the fact that people from the, LGBTQ plus community, they don't feel loved, this is the reality. These are people's stories right here. These are people's stories of what real people are going through. And so really really stop. You got to really think about, these are people that I go to work with. These are people that are in my family. How would I want to be treated? EA, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I think it's a lot. One, I don't know what church you're talking about for 2 hours to go in the building. Church, since I've been little, church has been all day, minimum 8 hours. So, man, I need to go to that church for 2 hours. So one thing I think, like, I think in a large sense, like biblically speaking, we've been doing church wrong. And I think we're still doing church wrong in a sense, right? Because when you look in the Bible, like that's not how church was done. Like church is supposed to be the church body. We're supposed to be family. Like that's one of the things that really bothered me. It's like, in church, you say brother this, sister that, but it's like, it ain't true. Because the same people you're saying brother this, sister that, then they're like talking behind their backs, and you see a lot of that stuff, and they always talking about love, and then yet there's a lot of like backstabbing. So it's like, it's not real family. And the thing is, the church folks, like the disciples that Christ had, the early church, they lived as one. They really did live as family, and they had everything in common. Like that's not something I've ever seen in modern day, really. Well, there was one time, but no, not really. So I think we got the idea of church, like the way we do church. It's a very kind of like a ceremonial, like it's kind of a club. It's a club. You come, you meet up for a club meeting and things like that, and then you go back to life, right? Church, as in the church is supposed to do life together. The whole point was for us to, there's unity. I mean, there's strength in unity, right? The idea that we're supposed to do life together, encourage one another, support one another, iron sharpen the iron, that kind of thing, right? On every aspect of life. That was the intention behind church. But that's not what's happening. I think on either end you look at it, that's not what's happening. I do think, though, like part of that is for church. Church was meant to connect, not just like through words like we're doing on Zoom, but also like socially, like connect with one another, like be physically with each other. One of the things you see a lot in the Bible is they break bread, like they eat together, right? Which is an intimate experience, right? That stuff creates real deep relationships. So I think, I mean, I didn't know this was a church. To me, I just saw a poster and then I joined. But like, I think that this serves well for, like, in terms of like, because we're all, I guess, different places in the country or maybe even the world, so this helps for us to connect. But I don't know, I wouldn't say necessarily like this will serve as church as God intended. I think church needs to be more intimate than this. You know what I mean? So that's one thing. Now, regarding the LGBT, I think one of the things that I've realized is that, I think someone mentioned it earlier. I think Sunflower mentioned that there is a cultural aspect response to that, but I think that the challenge that I see oftentimes is that our inability to separate the person from the sin. I think that sometimes, we don't know, we either let go or pretend the sin doesn't exist and we accept the full thing, or we do the opposite where we where we don't accept the person because of the sin. So I think it's important for us to learn from Christ and how he dealt with people and how he dealt with every situation, how he was able to look beyond the fault and see the need. And he was able to separate the person from the sin. So he never condoned sin, but he never rejected a person, right? So it's like knowing the difference, right? You're not your sin. You are victim to sin, but you're not sin. So I think those things are important for us to kind of keep in mind and learn from Christ. I think that's the difference. Because if we're looking at each other, if we're looking at society, if we're looking at other people, like, we're not gonna get it right. I think the only way we will get it right, this thing called relationship, this thing called love, the only way we'll get it right, because we see obviously how it's done wrong. But in order for us to be the difference, in order for us to be the example, we have to look and model the example that Christ gives and learn from him. That's the only way there'll be, there'll be hope. Otherwise, all we'll see and all we'll talk every day and every week and every time is how it's wrong and they'll never be right.
Absolutely. I think I agree with everything that you've said. The only thing I'm going to push back and disagree with is that a virtual space, in terms of what God intended for, cannot be personal. What I'm going to say about that is the beautiful thing is I've experienced church in person, and I've also experienced church here virtually. And that's with us even still meeting once a year, coming from different spaces. And what I've been experiencing virtually with this group of people here has been way more personal than what I've ever experienced in person. And so I guess what I'm saying to you is, like you said, you spoke about the flyer and everything like that, but being with this community for 3 years, we've gotten so close. So sometimes it's not the fact that it can't be done, it's just the fact that we're so used to seeing it in person, but we're taking for granted that just simply being in person does not create the community. If the community just simply meets, that does not necessarily mean that the community is close. The community has to be able to choose to be close. They should be able to come together, talk about vulnerability, weaknesses, encourage one another. But simply having the space does not guarantee that. And so when I talk about this church community, it can be done. And I'm saying that it can be done because we have done it. And when we come together in person over the summer, it shows. It shows. It's like we don't even skip a beat. So I know it's your first time and everything. But I'm just going to push back and disagree with the fact that just because it's online, that doesn't mean that it's not close. It actually is very close. We've cried together. We've been together, been in the trenches together. By the time we see each other every year, and some people meet in small groups, that's the beauty of it. We don't even wait. Some of us even wait for the retreat once a year, but we come together in pockets as well. And I always hear stories of, because I share this on BTM online, I've been meeting with this person. I've been helping out this person and their endeavors and everything. I've been encouraging prayer partners and all that. And so please, and this is for everybody now, but please don't take it for granted that simply just because you meet, you're a family. There are a number of churches, and a lot of you, here's the thing, a lot of you come on here and you've been in-person church experiences. And if you weren't getting something from this experience, you wouldn't keep coming. You wouldn't keep coming. You have a choice. You have a choice to go in person, everything like that. But the fact of the matter is, when I come on here online, I don't even treat it like it's online. I treat it like I'm with you in person. I treat it like I'm with you in person. I treat it like I'm seeing however many people in person, and I'm showing you that I see you. And I think that's the beauty of technology or in person, whatever it is, whatever space you're in, if it's in person, if it's online, treat it like, make sure you're seeing people, make sure you're caring for people, So that's the only thing I would say. Totally agree with everything else that you were saying. But in terms of that, we have 3 years plus together, and this is a family, this is a church, So with that, let's get ready to close out. This is just part 1. You'll see the flyer for part 2, and part 2 is going to focus on the rest of the book and also solutions, because the book talks about what can we do to bring the people back, okay? And that can be, and we're not about just ourselves. We want to make sure that how can churches that are in physical spaces find that as well, okay? So get ready for that. We're going to pray and close out for today. It's 12:04, and I said I would do 12 to 12 o'clock, 10 to 12 o'clock. And so I just want to thank you all, those that are part of the regular BTM family, those that are new as well, Edson and others. Thank you so much for coming on and being a part of our service for today. And then part 2 will be next week. And get ready for that. And so let's pray and close out. And hope you guys have an amazing day. Dear Heavenly Father God, I just want to thank you so much. Thank you for being there for us. Thank you for really blessing all of us. I remember in 2020, really wondering what you had for me and what life was going to look like. And I think for me in 2020, you made everything as it should be. I walked into my purpose, and I just want to thank you for giving me here a family. And thank you so much for the growth in everyone here, including myself. I've been able to really look at my life and grow. And so when we talk about the church, I believe the church can heal a lot of these things, but we have to create those safe spaces. We have to stop judging people. We have to look at ourselves and be honest with the fact that we still got stuff going on. We have to build stronger families. We have to learn how to be a friend, learn how to have a relationship, learn how to care for one another. We can't just assume that because I know how to use words or because I know how to say some words that I know how to communicate. We can't just assume that I know how to be a good friend when even some people might not even have many friendships. And so help us to go back to the basics. Help us to go back to the basics. Help us also to realize what is biblical and also what is based off of just tradition. Because many times our tradition and our politics might be killing the church of God, literally. But I'm truly believe you're trying to get us back to what is truly biblical so we can stop suffocating the people around us. Help us to make sure we're disciplining people that sexually abuse or even show different types of abuse to the people that are in community. Help us to be accountable, be held accountable, that this is a place where we can protect the victims and we hold the abusers accountable, God, that we will not do what was done in the past. Help us to, lastly, God, help us to mend the hurt and the pain within generations, multiple generations, God, that we will not look at each other and say, well, this generation is better or over this one and vice versa. But we realize that we have all something to learn from one another and that your will be done, God, that we will truly be a family wherever space that we are in and continue to grow in you and have a love relationship with you. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right. And so with that, I really enjoyed today's conversation. This was beautiful. And yeah, wow. I'm normally starting service at 12 something. And now we're done at 12 something. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for having this conversation with us today. Have a beautiful day. And book club on Monday and Bible study on Tuesday. We'll go over that supplemental study on John on Tuesday. Thank you guys that were, praying for me. I got some rest, and so I'm good now. As you can see, I'm good now. But I'm glad I took the rest because I woke up and I felt rejuvenated. All right. So with that, thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful weekend.
Wait, I have a question. Do you have to go right now?
Yeah, I do. I actually do.
Okay, because I wanted to tell you, you know that song I Need You to Survive?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking about the entire time, because when you were saying like, basically we're all a part of God's body, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what I was thinking about, how literally every person here is a body part and we're all functioning together, and that's the whole point. So yeah, that was very reminiscent of that song. You had me singing. I was about to start singing. I was about to unmute and start singing, but you know, that's not the space for that. But yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I got your email, Edson. I saved a picture of it, so I got it in my phone. And then everyone have a great day. We thank you so much for coming on, and enjoy your day. All right, keep on smiling. Keep on smiling. Take care, Aunt Ruthie. Take care, Sunflower. Edson, Ryan, good to see you. Cherie, Sam, CT, Tam, Susie, Jasmine, Marion, Jerry, I see you. I see you. Take care, Ashley and Joab. See you all. Charlene, I'll see you.